is where Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma was confirmed to serve as the next Secretary of Homeland Security. The vote was 54 to 45, with all but one Republican, to no one's surprise, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Everyone else, though, voted in favor. Mullin replaces Kristi Noem, who was ousted by President Trump after a string of controversies. Democratic Senators John Fetterman of Pennsylvania and Martin Heinrich of New Mexico did cross party lines to vote in favor of Mullin's confirmation, while Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona was absent. Mullin takes over the department amid a weeks-long DHS shutdown as lawmakers continue to clash over funding following the killing of 2 American citizens by federal officers in Minneapolis earlier this year. But this morning, there are new signs that a deal could be reached soon to end that partial shutdown. After a meeting at the White House last night, Senate Republicans now believe President Trump is willing to accept a potential deal to reopen the Department of Homeland Security, even if it does not fully fund ICE. That's according to Republican senators who were briefed on that meeting. Under the proposal presented to Trump, Senate Republicans would pass additional money for ICE under the budget reconciliation process later this year. This would mark a significant shift for Trump because he previously said he would not agree to anything unless Congress passed the Save America Act first, something he again pressed Senate Republicans on yesterday.
So I'm tying Homeland Security into voter identification with picture and proof of citizenship in order to vote. And those 2 items are the most important thing having to do with Homeland Security. So it should be part of the Homeland Security bill. And I'm requesting that the Republican senators do that immediately. You don't have to take a fast vote. Don't worry about Easter going home. In fact, make this one for Jesus, okay? Make this one for Jesus. That's what I tell them.
Make this one for Jesus. Joining us now, independent journalist Lindsay Keith, who's keeping tabs on the Republicans there on Capitol Hill. Morning, Lindsay. So talk to us about the latest you know. I mean, this is seemingly an untenable situation. The lines at TSA checkpoints and airports across the country only growing. Trump came up with the politically unpopular, quote, solution to send ICE agents, an agency with a toxic reputation right now, to those airports. Republicans, though, seemingly maybe looking for a way out.
Yeah, and they feel like they have a way out. It's good to be with you this morning. They are confident that they can get something done by the end of this week. They hope, if Democrats will play along with them. But really, you heard it there from the president himself. His goal is to make sure that Republicans do not lose sight of this Save America Act. That is his key piece of legislation that he wants to get across the finish line. And his concern was if all the focus is on opening the Department of Homeland Security, then that will get put on the back burner, and he didn't want that to happen. So he wanted to make sure that he was applying enough pressure to ensure that that didn't get lost in all these negotiations. And also, I'm hearing that he wanted to ensure that his new DHS Secretary, Markwayne Mullin, was going to get confirmed before he would try to push anything forward as well. And of course, that happened last night. He'll be sworn in by the president, we think, today. So, really, Republicans are feeling good and optimistic that the president now is aligned with their goal because they believe, as you mentioned, through this reconciliation process, that they can pass a separate bill that would be different than funding the Department of Homeland Security to get the Save America bill across the finish line, which, of course, is the president's first and foremost goal.
So let's talk about the president, though. I mean, there have been other moments where it looks like he was willing to cave on something, and then he reacted. He saw the bad headlines, framed that he was, backing down, and suddenly tossed that aside and reverted to his original position. Is that something that still makes Republicans nervous? Because until a deal is done, it's not quite done.
Well, I think that they are cautiously optimistic. And as you've mentioned, the president is a businessman. I think sometimes people forget that and how he wields his way or how he negotiates. And he's always willing to apply pressure where necessary. But from talking to Republicans, they feel confident from their meeting yesterday at the White House with the president and with Tom Homan and Markwayne Mullin that they have a solution that would be pleasing to the president and that would also be able to fund the Department of Homeland Security. So they are in close lockstep. And I think a lot of those people as well who are in that meeting are very close allies of the president. And so they felt optimistic walking out of that. So we'll see. Of course, the president can always shift his opinion. Anything could happen this week. You never want to say exactly what he will do. But from speaking with them, a lot of them feel very good about their objectives this week and what is possible.
Well, certainly the pain at the airport's only going to get worse as more and more spring break trips approach, as well as, of course, the Easter and Passover holidays. Lindsay Keith, thank you for your reporting and analysis. Coming up here, we'll go through Molly's new piece, The New York Times, titled "Dyslexics Are Too Smart for Trump," in response to the president's comments about California Governor Gavin Newsom. Morning Joe's coming right back with that.